Before the age of self-checkouts and supermarket chains, grocery shopping was pure magic. They were the heartbeat of the neighborhood, buzzing with laughter, jingles, and the warm scent of fresh bread that made every visit feel special. Join me as we sit back and remember 25 famous grocery stores that now only exist in memory. The A&P chain was a giant in the American grocery retail sector, operating for a long period since 1959. A&P's peak period lasted from 1915 to 1975, making it the largest grocery retailer in the United States and maintaining its position as the largest retailer of all types until 1965. A&P was as recognizable and famous as modern-day McDonald's or Google. At its height, specifically in the 1940s, A&P captured a staggering figure: 10% of total grocery spending across the entire United States. The company was founded in 1859 by George Gilman under the name Gilman and Company, initially just a small chain of tea and coffee retailers in New York City. Over time, A&P expanded into a national mail-order business. After World War I, A&P continued to grow, adding meat and produce sections, thus becoming a convenient one-stop shop for families. By 1930, A&P reached its absolute peak and dominated globally, becoming the world's largest retailer. However, financial troubles plagued the company, causing A&P to face 2 bankruptcies and eventually close its last store. You will never see this familiar image on every street anymore, but A&P's legacy remains a symbol of innovation, affordability, and the constant change of the American retail industry. The Pantry Pride chain once held a prominent position in the eastern United States, carrying a fascinating history spanning many decades. The story of this chain began in the late 1920s, founded by Samuel N. Friedland and his brother George the Furt Friedland. Initially, Pantry Pride operated under the name Quality Price Cutter, and the Friedland brothers opened their first store in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Pantry Pride grew steadily and strongly, becoming a household name in the region. Pantry Pride's reputation increased when Food Fair, the chain's parent company, decided to convert most of its stores to the Pantry Pride banner. However, Pantry Pride's pride and popularity could not shield the chain against increasing financial challenges. Unfortunately, financial difficulties plagued Pantry Pride. By 1978, Food Fair fell victim to these challenges and was forced to file for bankruptcy. Despite its remarkable history and the shopping memories it left behind, Pantry Pride gradually disappeared from the grocery retail landscape. The chain began to decline in the late 1970s and 1980s due to increased competition, changing consumer preferences, and financial difficulties. Loyal food. Fair Pantry Pride customers were saddened by this collapse, as they cherished the shopping experiences and sense of community these stores provided. Before becoming a store, Alpha Beta was just a clever idea from 2 brothers, Albert and Hugh Gerard. Alpha Beta was a pioneering grocery chain in the Southwest United States, leaving an indelible mark on the retail landscape thanks to its innovative approach. Their groundbreaking idea was to arrange grocery items alphabetically, Alpha in the store, making it easier for customers to find items. In 1915, they tested this idea at their Triangle Groceteria store. By 1917, the first official Alpha Beta store opened in Pomona, California. This novel grocery organization method was quickly embraced. Alpha Beta grew rapidly, reaching 7 stores within just 1 year. In 1929, the company was officially incorporated as Alpha Beta Food Markets. They also initiated the Alfie's coffee chain, named after the company, which later developed into the famous Denny's restaurant. In 1961, American stores acquired Alpha Beta. Subsequently, the chain was purchased by Skaggs Drug Centers and renamed Skaggs Alpha Beta, even expanding to sell electronics along with groceries. In 1978, the bankruptcy of Food Fair, Alpha Beta's parent company, caused major changes. Many stores in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas were renamed Jewel Osco. The Alpha Beta name gradually phased out. Many stores were converted to Ralph's or Food for Less, and many years later, Alpha Beta disappeared completely. Moving to the Midwest, we have Eagle Food Centers, which left a deep mark on the heartlands. Its history dates back to 1893 when the Tenenbaum family established the precursor to the Eagle store chain in Davenport, Iowa, concurrently with the Giefman family launching Eagle Cash and Carry. The company flourished and adopted the innovative self-service model in the 1930s. This demonstrated Eagle's spirit of innovation, helping them expand their footprint and connect with the community. Eagle's ownership changed hands many times, most notably in 1968 when Lucky Stores acquired Eagle and renamed the stores Eagle Discount Supermarkets. Despite initial successes, the chain still faced financial difficulties, leading to a bankruptcy filing in 1978. By 1989, the chain had reached over 130 locations. However, due to increased competition, especially in 1999 when the company reported a net loss of $1.5 million, Eagle began to face serious problems. Ultimately, the stores were forced to close in 2003, marking the end of an era for Eagle Food Centers and the community connections it had fostered. Nevertheless, the Eagle name survives in a few Eagle Country Market stores in eastern Iowa. Skaggs Companies emerged as an important figure in American retail history, dating back to 1915. This retail giant is considered the predecessor of many of today's top famous chains such as Safeway, Albertsons, Osco Drug, and Long's Drugs. The founder was Samuel M. Skaggs. His original store, Skaggs Cash Store in American Falls, Idaho, operated entirely based on cash transactions. With the help of 5 brothers, the company quickly expanded, reaching 191 stores by 1920. Marion Barton Skaggs, Samuel's son, continued to expand the family's grocery business by acquiring 4 local stores in Portland, setting the stage for significant growth. By 1926, Skaggs Enterprise included 673 stores and merged with Sam Seelig Company, forming Safeway under the guidance of Charles Merrill. This was a historical turning point, leading to subsequent expansions. Skaggs Companies evolved into American stores in the late 1970s. Prior to that, in 1969, Skaggs partnered with Albertsons to introduce combination food drugstores. However, this partnership ended in 1977, leading to Albertsons separating and flourishing, later even acquiring Safeway. Although the Skaggs name has faded, its impact on the grocery industry remains highly significant. Do you have any memories of waiting in line or hunting for your favorite item during that cash-only shopping era? Press the hype button and share your story in the comments section. Few people know that before becoming the familiar department store chain it is today, Kohl's had humble beginnings as a grocery store. The story began in 1946, when Maxwell Kohl opened the first Kohl's food store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Throughout the 1950s, Kohl's saw rapid growth and began introducing the famous dome design that later became a distinctive architectural hallmark of the chain. Under Maxwell Kohl's leadership, by the early 1960s, the company had built the largest grocery store chain in the Milwaukee area. Recognizing growth potential in 1962, Kohl decided to try his hand at the department store sector, opening the first location in Brookfield, Wisconsin. This department store division, which has become so familiar to consumers today, ultimately was the one that survived longer than the original grocery division. The fate of the grocery business was sealed in 1982 when A&P acquired Kohl's grocery division. However, even the protection of A&P, which was itself struggling with financial difficulties at the time, could not save the chain, and eventually Kohl's grocery stores closed permanently in 2003. This transition marked the end of an era and the birth of a new retail giant. But Kohl's legacy of serving the Milwaukee community as a quality grocery provider is still remembered. It highlights the evolution of retailers to survive in an ever-changing market, where fierce competition demands continuous adaptation and sometimes the complete abandonment of old business models. Gemco was a vibrant membership department store chain that carved its legacy into American retail history. The chain was founded in Anaheim, California in October 1959. Initially, Gemco operated as a coal company before switching to the grocery business a year later. Lucky Stores subsequently acquired Gemco, integrating supermarket products and turning it into a thriving chain. A prominent feature of Gemco was its commitment to the one-stop shopping model, considered the precursor to today's hypermarkets. Customers could find everything from gardening supplies, groceries, to general merchandise, all in a single shopping trip. However, fate changed in the 1980s. Gemco faced a series of unsuccessful takeover attempts. The parent company, Lucky Stores, ultimately decided to liquidate all of Gemco between September and November 1986 to prevent hostile takeover attempts. Although these once bustling stores gradually disappeared, their legacy remains. Target acquired many former Gemco locations and remodeled them into the iconic red and white Target stores we know today. Gemco's name, colors, and logo have become a part of retail nostalgia. We move on to Big Bear Stores, a beloved chain in Ohio and West Virginia throughout the 1970s. This chain was famous for its diverse selection and affordable prices, making it the preferred choice for many families' grocery needs. Founded by Wayne Brown in Columbus, Ohio, Big Bear grew steadily, expanding to over 100 stores by the 1980s. Big Bear is credited as the first company to introduce the motorized conveyor belt at the checkout counter. This was a major innovation that helped speed up checkout and enhance the shopping experience. However, increasing competition along with financial difficulties led to the chain's decline. Big Bear attempted to experiment with the superstore model, combining groceries with general merchandise in its Big Bear Plus stores in the 1980s. After being auctioned off in 1988, the company implemented cost-cutting measures, including employee layoffs. It didn't operate long before severe store deterioration caused customers to leave. Despite efforts to rebrand and renovate, Big Bear ultimately failed to keep pace with the changing grocery industry. The chain never recovered, and by 2004, the last Big Bear store closed, ending a shopping era loved by many. Although Fazio's could not maintain its position in the face of changing market dynamics, its role in shaping the shopping experience in California remains a memorable part of regional retail history. Fazio's was once a very prominent supermarket chain in Southern California, inscribing its name in the chronicles of retail history. The chain's journey began in 1930 with a humble grocery store on Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles. 3 years later, they launched their first official supermarket, and by 1954, the company was publicly listed. What set Fazio's apart was its commitment to providing convenience to customers. Shoppers flocked to its aisles for daily essentials, from fresh produce to groceries. The chain's growth was steady, but they faced fierce competition in the vibrant Southern California market. Fazio's continued to expand, and in 1968, the chain made its first foray outside Ohio by acquiring Dominick's, a chain of 18 stores in Chicago. But by the 1990s, Fazio's faced a difficult fight. Changing consumer preferences and market dynamics led to the chain's decline. Memories of Fazio's convenience and community presence still linger. Is there a familiar name on the map that many in the New York area know? Many people flocked here on weekends, none other than Hill's Supermarkets. This chain offered a wide variety of groceries to customers and was once popular. Despite gaining a certain popularity, Hill's Supermarkets faced fierce competition from other regional grocery chains. The company struggled to maintain its market share as competitors began offering more competitive prices and more comprehensive product selections. Gradually, Hill's Supermarkets was overtaken by these competitors and was ultimately forced to close permanently. The chain disappeared, leaving behind a void and regret for many familiar customers. Many still have fond memories of shopping at Hill's Supermarkets. They reminisce about the unique products they could find there and the friendly atmosphere of the stores. The former Hill's Supermarkets locations have now been replaced by other grocery retailers, but they remain a reminder of the chain's once vibrant presence in the New York area. Hill's Supermarkets left a deep impression on frequent customers. This chain contributed to shaping the grocery industry in the region for many years, even if it no longer exists. Red Owl was a grocery chain that once flourished and had a profound influence on the Midwest. The chain's story began uniquely in 1922 as a coal company affiliated with General Mills. Their original slogan was, "Be wise, burn Red Owl coal." The company's first store opened in Rochester, Minnesota, selling groceries, dry goods, and coal. Red Owl stores quickly appeared throughout the Midwest, including North Dakota, and reached a total of over 400 locations. The chain's characteristic logo featured a wise-looking red owl perched above the store name, a symbol that became synonymous with community-focused shopping. Red Owl was loved for its small stores that offered many options. The chain's community-centric spirit made it popular with customers. Red Owl was even part of Minnesota culture and appeared in the opening credits of the Mary Tyler Moore Show television program. However, the chain also faced many challenges, and after expanding into the Chicago area in the late 1950s, Red Owl sold its Chicago operations to National Tea Company in 1963. Subsequently, the chain was sold to wholesaler SuperValu in 1988, and the Red Owl name gradually phased out, although one franchise location still operates in Green Bay, Wisconsin. If you could go back to that time, what moment would you like to relive? Why is that moment so meaningful to you? Can you share it with us? Dominating the Midwestern grocery world, National Tea cannot be left unmentioned. This grocery store left a deep mark on American shopping history. The The company was founded in 1899 by George S. Rasmussen, a Danish immigrant in Chicago, Illinois. It started as a humble business with about 160 stores. However, by the late 1920s, National Tea had grown into a retail force, boasting over 600 locations in the Chicago area alone and an additional 1,000 stores nationwide. Its widespread presence and commitment to serving local communities set National Tea apart. Customers relied on its aisles for daily essentials, from fresh produce to groceries. The chain's iconic red and white signage became a familiar sight in neighborhoods throughout the Midwest. In 1955, the Canadian grocery giant George Weston Limited acquired National Tea, even as its annual sales had increased to $600 million. This acquisition marked a turning point, and National Tea's decline began in the 1990s. Finally, in 1995, Schnucks Markets acquired National Tea from Loblaw companies, and the once dominant store chain gradually disappeared. In 2001, the entire country witnessed Furr's file for bankruptcy and liquidate all assets because it couldn't secure enough investment for major development. Before that, we knew this location as a familiar stopping place. The truth is, Furr's was once a very prominent supermarket chain, leaving a lasting symbol in the retail landscape of Texas and New Mexico. The chain was founded by C.W. Furr in 1904, starting from a humble grocery store in Amarillo, Texas. Roy Furr, who joined the company in 1923, fueled the chain's expansion. By 1929, the Furr family began expanding the grocery store chain, eventually venturing into New Mexico. Furr's was loved by customers for its commitment to convenience and community spirit. However, the retail industry underwent major changes. In 1980, Kmart Corporation acquired Furr's, and then in 1988, the chain changed hands again. Despite these transitions, Furr's continued to evolve in an unexpected direction. It converted into a cafeteria-style dining chain instead of just selling groceries. This change meant the once bustling shopping aisles now echoed with the sounds of food trays and the aroma of hot meals. Founded in 1959, Hecht's was the brainchild of Boone County natives and entrepreneurs, Fred Haddad, Tom Ellis, Lester Ellis, and Douglas Cook. This was a regional grocery and department store chain that once adorned the retail landscape but ultimately vanished into history. The name Hecht's is a clever combination of the founders' last names, Haddad, Ellis, Cook. Hecht's was more than just a store, it was a center of community life. Hecht's stores were independent discount department stores scattered across small towns in West Virginia, Western Maryland, the Ohio Valley, and parts of Indiana, Kentucky, and North Carolina. It was an essential shopping destination for many locals. However, by the late 1990s, Hecht's faced fierce competition from larger chains and struggled to keep up. Despite multiple efforts to rebrand, including a brief period as part of the Big Bear chain, Hecht's ultimately succumbed to financial pressure and closed permanently. The disappearance of Hecht's is a reminder of the challenges regional retailers face when trying to compete with larger corporations. Are you still with us on this nostalgic journey? Hit the like or comment button to let us know you're enjoying it. Colonial Stores was once a prominent grocery chain across the southern United States, leaving an indelible mark on the region's shopping culture. The story begins with the David Pender Grocery Company, founded by David Pender in 1900 in Norfolk, Virginia. By 1926, the Pender Empire had 244 stores, employed over 1,500 people, with a respectable average revenue of $35,000 per store. The Colonial Stores name appeared in the mid-1940s after the merger of Big Star and Little Star grocery stores. Colonial Stores introduced the famous CS Rooster logo in 1947, when they converted all stores to the self-service model. The chain grew rapidly, acquiring Alber supermarkets and Stop & Shop companies in 1955. At its peak, you might remember that Colonial Stores boasted over 500 stores spanning Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. This affirmed its position as one of the nation's largest supermarket chains in the 20th century, operating in 11 states. After a long period of service by the 1970s, most stores had converted to the Big Star brand. Colonial Stores may have faded over time, but its legacy of innovation and resilience still resonates. Big Star continued to exist until the early 1990s before also closing permanently. Value Mart was a venture initiated by the retail giant Sears in an attempt to make its mark in the grocery business. Value Mart had humble beginnings in Seattle in the 1950s. Its original parent company was W.I.S. Feld's Jewelers, an unexpected combination of jewelry and groceries. Leveraging its strong brand reputation and widespread presence, Sears aimed to offer customers a convenient shopping experience by combining groceries with its other products. Value Mart stores were designed to provide shoppers with a one-stop destination for all their needs, from clothing and household appliances to groceries. However, despite Sears' best efforts, Value Mart struggled to gain a foothold in the competitive grocery market. The venture faced challenges such as fierce competition from established grocery chains and logistical issues in managing a diverse range of products. Ultimately, Value Mart failed to establish itself as a major player in the grocery industry and ceased operations in the late 1970s. Lucky Stores, founded in 1935 by Charles Crouch as Peninsula Stores Limited, once graced the American supermarket landscape. Lucky grew into a beloved chain, known for its affordable prices and diverse selection of goods. In its heyday, Lucky Stores dominated the West Coast, attracting shoppers with convenient locations and quality products. The chain was also the parent company of Gemco. Lucky went through a series of resales, ending with a bankruptcy filing in 1994. The following year, Food Lion acquired the remnants of Cash and Carry and ended that brand, converting everything to Sweet Bay Supermarket, a final attempt to maintain the brand, but it also failed. As the grocery industry evolved, Lucky faced stiff challenges. This ultimately led to the chain being acquired by Albertsons in the late 1990s. Although the Lucky brand still exists in some areas, its original form was largely absorbed by Albertsons, and the name was gradually phased out in many regions. Lucky Stores remains a nostalgic memory for many who grew up shopping there. Food Fair faced a sharp decline in the late 70s, so let's rewind to when it was still strong. Food Fair, also known as Pantry Pride in some areas, was a prominent grocery chain in the 1970s. This chain was a favorite choice for many shoppers, offering a wide range of products and known for its competitive prices. Food Fair was originally founded by Samuel Friedland as Reading Giant Quality Price Cutter. By the 1940s, the name was changed to Food Fair, and the chain grew to over 250 locations. In the 1960s, the company bought a smaller chain with its own private label, Pantry Pride, and used this name for its discount stores, later gradually converting all Food Fair stores into Pantry Pride due to the popularity of the discount model. But then, factors such as increased competition, changing consumer preferences, and financial difficulties contributed to the chain's downfall. Despite rebranding efforts, the chain ultimately failed to reverse its fate. Many loyal customers felt saddened by the closure of their beloved Food Fair/Pantry Pride stores. They fondly remember the shopping experiences and the sense of community these stores provided. Food Fair ended in 1993, but its legacy lives on in the memories of those who frequented it during its heyday. Omni Superstore was once a prominent hypermarket chain in the Chicago area, etching its presence onto the retail landscape before disappearing. This chain was founded by Dominic Feiner Foods in 1987, with the first Omni Superstore opening in Orland Park, Illinois. Imagine a vast space where groceries, electronics, and household goods converged. Omni was conceived with the goal of countering the low-price strategy and no-frills approach of Cub Foods, which had stirred up the Chicago grocery market. Omni Superstore became the answer to this fierce competition. Over the next decade, 17 more stores sprang up across the Chicago metropolitan area. However, despite initial promises, Omni faced major challenges. Consumer preferences changed, and new competitors like Meijer, Whole Foods, and Walmart all entered the market. In 1997, Dominick's phased out Omni, converting the stores to the Dominick's brand. The once bustling aisles where shoppers filled their grocery carts now only echo with memories. Bohack was a grocery chain that flourished and became an invisible link in the heart of 20th century New Yorkers. Starting humbly in 1887, founded by Henry C. Bohack, the first store opened on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. Soon after, the iconic red and white signs adorned neighborhoods, inviting shoppers with promises of quality and community spirit. Bohack was more than just a place to buy goods. It was a center for social interaction. Imagine your parents or neighbors working there. Those were the friendly faces behind the checkout counter. Grocers knew their regulars well, and store managers understood that community was the secret ingredient to the chain's success. This family-owned chain embodied the spirit of friendly service. Bohack expanded across the boroughs and Long Island, reaching nearly 750 locations by the late 1960s. Bohack was once an integral part of New York City, Henry Bohack even trying his hand at gas stations and restaurants, though these efforts were cut short by the Great Depression. After multiple bankruptcies, Bohack ceased operations permanently in 1977. The collapse of this chain left a big void. For Long Island residents, memories of the aisles, the shelves, and the shared laughter with familiar faces still resonate. Bohack became a cherished memory of a place where shopping was intertwined with conversation. QFI, or Quality Food Incorporated, was a beloved grocery chain in the Pacific Northwest throughout the 1970s. The chain quickly became a favorite choice for shoppers in the region, thanks to its commitment to quality and fresh products. QFI carved out a solid niche for itself in the competitive grocery market, thanks to its friendly service and diverse selection of goods. Many people who grew up in the Pacific Northwest during that time still clearly remember shopping at QFI. They recall the days of browsing the aisles and discovering new and delicious foods at QFI. However, QFEI also faced challenges that led to its decline. As larger grocery businesses expanded their reach, QFI found it increasingly difficult to compete. The chain couldn't keep up with the changing industry. Ultimately, QFY was absorbed by larger grocery chains. Although QFY's name may have faded, its legacy lives on in the memories of those who loved the quality and friendly service the chain provided. First National Stores, often known by the cozy name Finest, was a widely popular grocery chain that had a deep influence on the Northeast United States. With a history that can be traced back to the 1800s, Finest was one of the oldest retailers in the region, operating enduringly for decades from its headquarters in Somerset, Massachusetts. The chain became an integral part of the daily lives of many families in New England. Customers trusted Finest for daily essentials and regularly visited its familiar aisles. However, in 1978, the company was acquired by the Pick and Pay grocery chain, and Finest's New England operations were moved to Connecticut. This change in ownership signaled the start of a new era, but not the final one. A decade later, Bilo's Dutch parent company acquired First National. Under this new ownership, a crucial decision was made. Finest stores were converted to the Stop & Shop's brand. Although some First National stores still operated sporadically until the early 1990s, the last Finest chain store officially closed in 1993. Finest's disappearance is a clear example of how long-standing regional chains are swallowed up or merged by larger corporations amid an increasingly centralized and competitive grocery market. Mars Supermarkets was a family-owned store chain, an integral part of the Baltimore, Maryland area. The chain began in the mid-1940s when Joseph Dina named his supermarket after the famous Mars flying boat seaplane. Joe later sold his shares to his two younger brothers, and they operated the chain for over 50 years. At its peak, Mars had 13 stores across Maryland. These stores were maintained until 2016. Mars attempted to implement cost-cutting measures, but ultimately couldn't compete with larger and stronger rivals like Wegmans and Harris Teeter. Finally, Mars sold 5 of its stores to Weis Markets and decided to close the remaining locations. Mars's downfall is a typical story of regional family businesses unable to resist the wave of large supermarket chains, where low prices and superior operational efficiency are the determining factors for survival. The memory of Mars, a beloved local grocery store, remains in the hearts of Baltimore residents. This chain was founded by Dominic DiMatteo, a Sicilian-born immigrant, in 1918. After opening the second location in 1934, the DiMatteo family quickly expanded, and by 1950 they opened a 14,000-square-foot supermarket. The chain reached 19 locations before Dominic DiMatteo sold it to Fisher Foods in 1968. However, the DiMatteo family continued to operate the stores with Fisher's support. Under Fisher's management, Dominic's expanded to 45 locations, but the DiMatteo family was dissatisfied with the initial agreement and decided to buy back the chain for $100 million. The 1980s was a period when Dominic's actively experimented with novel concepts to attract customers, including introducing cafes and convenient photo development services right inside the store. However, tragedy struck when Dominic DiMatteo Jr. passed away in the early 1990s, leaving the business to his children who lacked a deep passion for the grocery industry. By 1998, Safeway had taken ownership of 116 Dominic's locations. Over the next 15 years, the chain almost completely disappeared, 25. Strange 1940s items you'll never find in stores today. You won't believe what used to sit on wartime grocery shelves. From steamed bread in a can and coffee made from chicory root to wobbly gelatin meat molds, everything reflects the creativity and resilience of a generation. Today, let's open the memory box to discover the strangest grocery items of the 1940s. Powdered eggs. The story of powdered eggs is a tale of adaptation for the American breakfast, and it was one of the most common yet strange items of the 1940s. As the war raged, fresh eggs were prioritized for shipping overseas to soldiers or were rationed to near scarcity for the home front. To keep breakfast on the table, families were forced to use egg powder. This product was sold in tins or cardboard boxes, looking like pale gold dust. Homemakers were instructed to whisk the powder with water until it achieved a texture like a freshly cracked egg, although the government and companies advertised them heavily, assuring homemakers they could still fry, bake, and cook with them. As if nothing had changed, the reality was much harsher. Most people remember its chalky flavor, a taste real eggs never had. Families learned to cope with it, mixing the egg powder into cakes, stirring it into dough, or adding milk and herbs to mask the unusual taste. Even though children knew the difference between egg powder and real eggs, hunger and the need for survival meant they ate it anyway. These tins became as common in the pantry as flour and sugar. Wartime margarine with dye packets. This second strange item is margarine with dye packets, something that confused children during the war. Because real butter was scarce and expensive, margarine became the daily alternative. But this was not the brightly colored yellow margarine that we know today. It was originally sold as a plain white block. To make it look more like butter, companies had to attach a small packet of yellow dye. The homemaker's task was to knead this dye through the block of margarine by hand. This process is remembered as messy, tedious, and hardly appealing. Yet, it was a subtle reminder that substitutes were the new normal, and in wartime, appearance mattered more than flavor. Advertisements at the time even attempted to market this messy ritual as family fun. Some remember their children begging to help, squeezing the dye packet until the yellow spread unevenly, leaving streaks of yellow in the white block, a process that had to be repeated every time a new block was purchased. Although many parents simply sighed, the process accomplished the task of fooling the eye and ensuring that at least the margarine looked like butter. The purchase and use of wartime margarine was a sign of economic and personal sacrifice. Families accepted this inconvenience because they knew the real butter was being sent where it was needed more the front lines. After the war, margarine was finally dyed before being sold, and few recall that dye packet with fondness. The memory of having to hand color margarine remains, one of the strangest details of wartime grocery shopping. Canned horse meat stew. Among the strange protein sources of the 1940s, canned horse meat stew was the most controversial and difficult item to swallow, both literally and figuratively. When beef supplies were low and rationed, but horses were abundant, some companies began selling canned horse meat as a stew. For many Americans, the idea of eating horse meat was deeply unsettling, but wartime hunger tempered the resistance. Companies used patriotic advertising tactics, attempting to frame eating horse meat as a noble choice, with slogans like, "Every bite helps the war effort," aiming to make eating horse meat feel patriotic. In some areas, butchers openly sold cuts of horse meat, although they were carefully labeled to avoid scaring off buyers. Those who ate it often avoided telling neighbors, embarrassed by the social stigma. Horse meat was promoted as affordable, hearty, and patriotic. In reality, it was described as tough, stringy, and having a flavor that most Americans did not favor. Savory gelatin desserts. While fruit gelatine was already popular, savory gelatine desserts were a peculiar culinary trend of the 1940s. This was a period when savory flavors like tomato, celery, or even chicken were introduced. These powders were marketed as creative ways to stretch meals and conserve food. Homemakers were encouraged to turn leftovers into congealed salads or aspic. Government pamphlets even included recipes for gelatin meat salads, showcasing peas, carrots, and even hot dogs suspended inside wobbly shapes. Magazines praised them as economical, modern, and attractive. Homemakers were encouraged to suspend bits of vegetables, meat scraps, or even fish inside blocks of gelatin, creating bizarre dishes that confused both children and guests. The goal was efficiency. Nothing was wasted, everything was served. Although this resourcefulness was admirable, children were especially confused and horrified when they expected a dessert but found vegetables inside. Mock banana extract. Mock banana extract is a strange invention that speaks to the supply chain disruptions of the 1940s. With banana imports cut off during the war, Americans had to say goodbye to their favorite tropical fruit. But clever chemists came up with a flavoring substitute. This flavoring was created from plants like figs or banana squash, bottled, and sold as mock banana extract. The purpose was for baking, helping baked goods, cakes, and puddings still carry a hint of banana flavor, even without real bananas around. Its flavor is remembered as strange, sharp, and not entirely true to real bananas. For families desperate to retain familiar recipes, it became a fixture in the pantry. Homemakers traded tips on how to blend it with sugar or vanilla to mask the strange aftertaste. Children who grew up on this flavor often said it tasted artificial when they finally got to eat a real banana after the war. At the time, it was a minor miracle, something to fill the gap between loss and normalcy. Canned bread. Canned bread is a grocery item whose very idea might make us shudder today. Shaking a tube of bread out of a can like cranberry sauce. It was once a very common item, introduced in the late 1920s by B&M. This bread was made from whole wheat, flour, cornmeal, and molasses. The unique part is that these ingredients were steamed, and the bread rose directly inside the can. Its main advantage over standard fresh bread was its extended shelf life. This feature made it an excellent alternative during the instability of the Great Depression and World War II, when long-term preservation was paramount. Buying and stocking canned bread was a precautionary act, ensuring that even if transportation issues or rationing became severe, the family could still have a reliable source of carbohydrates. Families typically served it sliced cold, sometimes lightly toasted and spread with margarine or molasses. It had a denser, moister texture than traditional baked bread, but in the 1940s it was convenience and security, canned. Canned bread is a symbol of the essential nature of food stocking during wartime, where everything could be cut off at any time. Did you ever choose these items with your mother at the grocery store? Comment below to spread these priceless memories. Dehydrated soup bricks. Dehydrated soup bricks were a strange but extremely practical wartime grocery item, symbolizing convenience and efficiency. These compressed blocks or rectangles contained dried vegetables, broth, and grains, all dehydrated and ready to be boiled into soup. They were heavily promoted as a miracle of convenience. Just drop a brick into boiling water and dinner was ready. Some brands even had patriotic names like Victory Soup, promising both comfort and efficiency. Although their flavor was far from culinary standard, they became a way for families to turn almost nothing into a warming meal that could feed a crowd. Community cookbooks often suggested adding bits of onion, potato, or cabbage to make the broth heartier and mask the artificial taste. Children often recall the bricks dissolving into cloudy broth with a strange smell, but it was warm and filling. For both soldiers and civilians, they became a familiar staple. Soy Victory sausage. Soy Victory sausage is a story of how Americans learned to eat soy during the war. It became one of the strangest types of meat on the shelves in the 1940s. With real meat supplies strictly limited due to rationing, food companies sought to stretch the meager amount of meat by blending soy flour, fillers, and meat scraps into sausages. The main goal was to create a product that was cheap, filling, and looked like a sausage. But the result was often unpopular with consumers. When cooked, these sausages were often rubbery or bland. The unusual flavor of soy and fillers was a major disappointment for families accustomed to real meat sausages. Nevertheless, their affordability and ability to fill hungry stomachs made them essential. The government promoted the use of soy as a patriotic act, calling on families to accept soy as a way to help the troops win the war. Cookbooks of the era included recipes for adding onions, breadcrumbs, or herbs to try and improve the flavor, and families learned to slice them into stews or casseroles, where the strange taste could be hidden. For many, this was their first real exposure to soy as a staple food. Soy Victory sausage never became a beloved dish, but it remains in memory as something both strange and necessary during that difficult period. Canned liver spread. Canned liver spread was another unusual but common item on grocery shelves, appearing due to strict rationing of premium meats. When muscle meat was scarce, organ meat became a more practical option. Liver, which was a cheap and iron-rich source of protein, was processed into a spreadable paste and packaged in tins. It was heavily advertised as a cost-effective sandwich filler, perfect for school lunchboxes or quick family meals. Homemakers were encouraged to spread it on crackers or toast to make it seem more appealing, a quick substitution for meat. But you know, the strong flavor of liver is difficult to conceal. Children especially disliked its metallic taste, often complaining about the strong, unpleasant flavor. Although children's resistance was clear, hunger and the need to conserve often won over preference. For immigrant families already familiar with eating liver and organ meats, this product was more welcomed, but many Americans found it difficult to accept it. Recipes often suggested mixing the liver paste with mustard or onions to try and temper the strong flavor. After the war, canned liver spread persisted in some markets, but gradually disappeared from mainstream shelves. remembered as one of the strangest and least loved protein options of the decade. Sardine and egg paste. Sardine and egg paste sounds horrific today, but in the 1940s it was an essential solution and promoted as a cheap, high-protein spread. Sold in small tins, it was a mixture of mashed sardines, hard-boiled eggs, oil, and spices. The result was a salty and pungent paste. Wartime advertisements promoted it as an affordable source of nutrition, a patriotic way to get both protein and vitamins in one bite. This was an ideal option for families stretching their rations. Families used it in sandwiches or served it at community meals when meat was scarce. Although it filled hungry stomachs and had nutritional value, its smell was unmistakable, and many children dreaded finding it in their lunchboxes. The intense, pungent odor was a major barrier. In some coastal areas, sardine products were more accepted, but inland, many people found this flavor too difficult to tolerate. Nevertheless, it was a cheap and effective source of protein that helped stretch rations. This strange spread is a testament to how ready people were to sacrifice personal preference to ensure survival during times of scarcity. Once rationing ended, sardine and egg paste quickly fell out of favor, only leaving the memory of one of the strangest spreads ever sold in American grocery stores. If this video brought back good memories, give it a hype. Your support keeps nostalgic content like this alive. Victory Coffee Substitute. Victory Coffee Substitute is a bitter reminder of the shortage of imported goods. When real coffee beans were scarce and expensive, Americans had to accept that their morning cup of coffee would no longer taste the same. This substitute was made from roasted chicory root, barley, or other grains. Jars of the substitute were displayed on grocery shelves, and companies advertised them as plentiful and satisfying, though few consumers agreed. Some advertisements even claimed it was healthier than real coffee, praising it as easy on the nerves and ideal for the family. Most people remember that it tasted bitter, burnt, or earthy, lacking the warmth and aroma of real coffee. For many, brewing and drinking it was no longer about flavor, but about maintaining a comforting ritual. Homemakers were encouraged to brew it proudly, as if drinking it were a patriotic duty. Families drank it with milk, or sweetened it with precious sugar, often molasses or corn syrup, to mask the bitterness. Although the quality was inferior, it provided people with something hot to drink, and the ritual was more important than the taste. Some soldiers overseas became accustomed to it and continued drinking it even after the war, but most civilians abandoned it as soon as real coffee returned. Canned rabbit. Canned rabbit became more common in the 1940s when rationing forced families to look for non-traditional meats. Rabbit was already eaten in rural areas, but urban families were less familiar with it. Canned rabbit stew was promoted as a hearty, affordable option that fit wartime meal planning. The government even suggested rabbit was the chicken of the garden, trying to make it sound familiar to cautious shoppers. In large cities, many people felt uncomfortable eating something they considered a pet. However, hunger and necessity overcame these worries. Companies framed rabbit as patriotic, arguing that eating it was another way to support the troops. Advertisements described it as tender and tasty, although many found it tasted more gamey than beef or chicken. Families learned to mix it with vegetables or serve it over noodles to stretch it further. For some, canned rabbit was a welcome alternative. For others, it was a last resort. When beef and poultry returned to the shelves after the war, rabbit quickly lost its status, remembered as a curious but short-lived wartime food. Karo corn syrup. Karo corn syrup was one of the most heavily marketed products of the 1940s and a symbol of wartime adaptation. With sugar heavily rationed, Karo was promoted as a one-to-one substitute for scarce sugar. Grocery stores displayed it prominently, and advertisements showed smiling homemakers pouring the thick syrup into pies, cakes, and drinks as if nothing were missing. The message was clear. Corn syrup could fill the gap and keep desserts on the table. It was cheap, abundant, and versatile, making it easy to sell during rationing. Families used it in everything from lemonade to taffy, although the flavor was distinctly different from sugar. Cookbooks of the era had entire sections dedicated to corn syrup recipes, emphasizing its patriotic value. Children grew up remembering its sticky texture and overly sweet taste. For many, it became an ingredient that was either loved or hated, directly tied to the memory of rationing. Karo syrup lost its staple status after the war, but during its peak, it was a symbol of wartime adaptability, a sticky substitute that families learned to rely on. Powdered lemonade mixed with no real lemon. Powdered lemonade mixed with no real lemon was another strange wartime grocery item, born out of severe scarcity of imported citrus. With imports cut off, companies filled the gap with artificial flavoring powders, promising a tart, refreshing drink. Families would dissolve this powder in water, often adding corn syrup or precious sugar to make it more palatable. Although the result was a pale imitation of real lemonade for children, it was still a welcome sweet treat. Advertisements sold it as modern and convenient, part of a new wave of food science aimed at making everyday life easier. Some homemakers even sneakily use the powder in baking, adding it to cakes or pies as a citrus substitute. The flavor was artificial, and those who grew up on it often remember it tasting chemical compared to fresh fruit. Its presence was a reminder of the lengths companies would go to fill empty shelf spaces during rationing. When real lemons returned to the market after the war, powdered lemonade mix quickly lost its footing. Victory Garden Canning Kits. Victory Garden canning kits became household essentials in the 1940s, part of a larger patriotic movement. As the government urged families to grow and preserve their own food to support the troops, gardens were promoted as acts of patriotic service. These kits sold in grocery stores often included glass jars, lids, labels, and detailed instructions. They were designed to make the process of canning, though time-consuming, easier for families with little experience. Homemakers were told that every jar of beans, tomatoes, or peaches they preserved was a direct contribution to the war effort, freeing up food for soldiers overseas. Communities even held canning demonstrations, teaching people how to safely preserve vegetables without waste. For children, seeing the shelves in the cellar stocked with jars of preserved food became a symbol of safety, a colorful display of survival. Although the process was sometimes dangerous, with the risk of jars breaking or food spoiling if not done correctly, the sense of pride in filling the pantry with homemade preserves was immense. Spam variants, like a spiced ham loaf. Spam was already a staple, but its variants, such as spiced ham loaf or cheese loaf, filled the shelves in the 1940s. Spam's popularity with soldiers and civilians led to a surge in demand for long-lasting, versatile canned meat. As demand grew, companies introduced different flavored versions to add variety. Many of these were highly processed, with textures and flavors that weren't always satisfactory. Families used them in casseroles, sandwiches, and stews, doing their best to stretch the meat over multiple meals. Some homemakers swore certain flavors were better, while others joked they all tasted the same. The availability and affordability made these variants popular despite their strangeness. There were even cookbooks written around how to use them creatively. After the war, Spam persisted, but most of the stranger variants gradually disappeared, remembered more as wartime experiments than long-lasting favorites. Underwood Deviled Ham Spread. Underwood Deviled Ham Spread is a signature product of America's obsession with shelf-stable meat spreads, a convenient solution during rationing. This product was advertised as a great meat or snack item, made from ham mixed with mustard powder, spices, and turmeric. It followed the same idea as canned liver spread or other pastes of the era, providing a spreadable, shelf-stable protein that could easily be used in sandwiches or eaten with crackers. It was one of many solutions families used to cope with the shortage of fresh meat. Underwood Deviled Ham is remembered for its spicy, pungent flavor, setting it apart from other bland canned meats. However, while it offered a quick way to fill a sandwich or satisfy hunger, it was replaced by fresher options once meat supplies returned to normal. Molasses in jars. Molasses in jars became the essential sweetener of the 1940s because sugar was heavily rationed. Molasses was not just a sugar substitute, it was also promoted as rich in iron and vitamins, turning it into a nutritional powerhouse. Families switched to using molasses, although its strong, bittersweet flavor was controversial. Many households learned to adapt, using it not only in baking but also spread on bread or stirred into milk. Popular wartime recipes like molasses cookies, gingerbread, and baked beans all relied on this syrupy ingredient to replace scarce sugar. Molasses was a symbol of resourcefulness. It was cheap, easy to store, and widely promoted as patriotic, making it a familiar jar in almost every kitchen. While children often found its intense flavor off-putting, adults appreciated its versatility and availability. After the war, sugar returned, and molasses lost its status as a staple, although it remains tied to traditional recipes. Vienna sausage. Vienna sausage was a staple in American households from the 1940s to the 1970s. This is a story of food born not out of taste but out of necessity. These pre-cooked sausages, made from chicken, pork, or beef, were sold in small cans, submerged in a type of broth or gelatin. The most common method of consumption was eating them straight from the can without cooking, making them survival food, the food of the poor. Vienna sausage was the end-of-the-month food, the belly-filling food without shame. Although their texture could be described as slimy, they were a reliable source of protein when the refrigerator was empty. They were eaten with crackers, mixed into rice, or sliced into beans. In the 1970s, their price increased, making them an item people hesitated to buy, a change from their status as a cheap, thoughtless meal in the 1940s. Despite the price change, the memory of opening a can of Vienna sausage for a quick dinner remains, representing a small comfort during hard times. Dried milk tablets. Dried milk tablets were one of the strangest ways families in the 1940s tried to meet nutritional needs, especially when fresh milk was difficult to preserve and often reserved for soldiers or children. Companies offered a milk substitute that was dehydrated and compressed into small, chalky tablets. They were sold in small tins or cardboard boxes, advertised as convenient and portable nutrition for the whole family. Parents were encouraged to pack them in lunchboxes or carry them on trips as a source of protein and vitamins. However, the reality was less appealing. The tablets were hard, crumbled easily, and left a dry coating on the tongue. Many children hated their strange, bitter taste. With few alternatives, they were forced to swallow them, often remembered as a type of punishment food. Cookbooks sometimes suggested crushing the tablets into powder and mixing it with water to create a substitute milk drink, although the flavor remained bitter and strange. Vegetable Victory Loaf Mix. Vegetable Victory Loaf Mix was a strange powdered product designed to be baked into a meat substitute, demonstrating the resourcefulness of wartime homemakers. This product was made primarily from beans, grains, and fillers. It was heavily promoted as patriotic, nutritious, and economical, a way to conserve meat for the troops. Homemakers were encouraged to bake it in a loaf pan and serve it like meatloaf, sliced for dinner alongside vegetables or gravy. Government campaigns portrayed it as victory on a plate, encouraging families to eat it proudly, even as meat was scarce. Its texture is remembered as dense and the flavor bland. Many homemakers tried to mask the taste by covering it with a thick layer of ketchup or sauce, hoping children wouldn't notice the difference. At community events, this dish became a symbol of sacrifice and ingenuity, although no one pretended it was delicious. Thank you for following. To continue watching more content, comment yes to let us know you're still watching. Canned ox tongue. Canned ox tongue is a story of necessity that turned a specialty item into a common option, strangely normalized in the 1940s. Ox tongue was traditionally considered a delicacy in some European cuisines, but the wartime scarcity of high-quality beef made it a more practical protein source in the US. Canned versions appeared on grocery shelves, promising convenience and affordability, a solution when premium beef cuts were strictly rationed. Some advertisements even tried to obscure the cut by calling it canned tongue beef, making it sound less alarming. In households, it was often sliced thin and carefully arranged on a platter, sometimes served cold with pickles or mustard, so guests might not immediately realize what they were eating. Homemakers were encouraged to slice it thin for sandwiches or serve it cold on a platter. Despite its strong flavor and surprisingly tender meat, many Americans still struggled with the idea of eating tongue. It was cheaper than premium cuts and available when beef was scarce, so families tried it. After the war, canned ox tongue gradually lost its status as a staple and disappeared from mainstream grocery stores, but its memory remains as one of the strangest meats ever to appear on the shelves. Gelatin-based meat mold kits. Gelatin-based meat molds, or aspic, were one of the most peculiar products ever found in grocery stores. These mix packets came with gelatin powder and instructions encouraging homemakers to suspend leftover meat scraps, vegetables, or even fish inside wobbly blocks of jelly. The main goal was to demonstrate resourcefulness and waste nothing, stretching the smallest bits of protein into a seemingly complete dish. Cookbooks of the era promoted these molds as economical, modern, and supposedly elegant on the dinner table. To help the gelatin blend more naturally with the meat inside, the kits often included savory flavors like celery or chicken. Although few families called the result delicious, children were especially horrified by its texture. Cold, cubed beef or canned tuna floating in jelly was not comfort food. The government and advertisers stressed that homemakers were doing their part by stretching every ounce of protein, and gelatin molds were a way to do that. Homemakers shared recipes at community events, often competing to see whose creation looked the most decorative, though taste was rarely the priority. Canned codfish cakes. Canned codfish cakes are another example of how seafood was turned into shelf-stable protein in the 1940s. They were patties made from ground cod mixed with fillers like potato flour and spices, then packaged in tins for easy preservation. To serve, homemakers would fry or bake these patties, often adding sauce to mask the bland flavor. Advertisements boasted that codfish cakes were as easy to make as toast, highlighting their convenience in the kitchen. In coastal areas like New England, they were more readily accepted, but inland families often found them strange and too salty. Children frequently complained about their fishy smell, but they were filling and inexpensive. Despite geographical differences in acceptance, they were an important source of protein when fresh seafood was scarce. As fresh seafood became more available after the war, canned codfish cakes lost their appeal, remembered as one of the stranger canned items of the 1940s. Soy Victory Bread. Soy Victory Bread was another patriotic substitute. With wheat being rationed, bakers added soy flour to bread dough to stretch the supply. It was promoted as nutritious, patriotic, and a way to help win the war. Posters proudly declared, "Eat soy bread, save wheat for the front," directly linking every slice to the war overseas. Although some homemakers swore its dense texture was fine, many admitted the flavor was heavy and unappealing. The bread was often heavier and denser, with a slightly unusual taste compared to the soft white bread children were accustomed to. Nevertheless, families served it proudly, accepting it as part of their patriotic duty. It is remembered today as a food that was both strange and deeply tied to the sacrifices of the 1940s. Canned dandelion greens. Canned dandelion greens were another oddity of the 1940s, showing how rationing pushed consumers to accept foods once considered weeds. Dandelion greens had previously been foraged by rural families, used in salads or sautéed as a cheap source of nutrition. But during the war, companies began canning and selling dandelion greens, promoting them as super nutritious wartime vegetables. Advertisements claimed they were rich in iron, vitamins, and fiber, turning them into a patriotic choice. However, the canned version often had a mushy, bitter texture, causing many first-time buyers to give up. Homemakers tried to mask the flavor with vinegar, butter, or bacon grease, but children especially protested them. Dandelion greens developed a reputation as survival food, a reminder that nothing edible should be wasted. Help us preserve this legacy by sharing your personal memories in the comments section. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Back to Yesterday channel to cherish and discover more nostalgic stories about old America.